The classroom was buzzing with the sound of group discussions that afternoon. In the far right corner, Jungkook sat with his group, to guys and to girls. They were busy working on a presentation for the following week. But Yin's attention was fixed on just one person, Jeon Jungkook. From her seat near the window, Yin stared sharply at the group. Her eyes stopped on a girl named Hannah, who was sitting far too close to Jungkook, deliberately close. "So, Jungkook, do you think we should use surveys or interviews?" Hannah asked while brushing her fingertip against Jungkook's arm. Her voice was sweet and coy, far too flirty for an academic discussion. Jungkook shifted slightly, subtly pulling away from her touch without any change in expression. "Surveys are faster." "I already said that," he replied coldly, not even looking at her. Hannah giggled softly. "Yeah, but I just wanted to hear you say it again." From afar, at her seat, Yin rolled her eyes. "Ugh, so tacky," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for Yuju beside her to glance over. "Who were you talking to just now?" Yuju asked with a teasing smile. She already had a good idea where Yin's mind was since she'd also been sneakily following Yin's line of sight. "No one. Just annoyed seeing someone act all cutesy like we're filming a soap opera instead of going to college." Yuju giggled. "Are you annoyed? Or jealous?" Yin quickly turned her head. "Please don't start. I just can't stand people who try so hard to get attention." Yuju gave her a look that clearly said "you're right," but chose not to press further. Yin's eyes returned to the group. Jungkook still wore his usual cold expression, showing zero interest in Hannah. Still, seeing another girl cling to him like that was enough to boil her blood. Without another word, Yin stood up and grabbed her phone. "Where are you going?" Yuju asked. "Cafeteria. I'm thirsty," Yin answered curtly, her face still neutral, but her movements were sharp, pulling her bag with a little more force than usual, her steps a bit too quick. Yuju smiled knowingly and stood up as well. "Waiting for you to admit it is like waiting for a snake to evolve into a monkey. Let's go. I'm thirsty too." They walked out of the classroom, unaware that a pair of eyes had been secretly watching. Jungkook glanced at the door that had just closed behind Yin and Yuju, then lowered his gaze back to the laptop, but his fingers had stopped typing. Yin sat in the corner of the cafeteria, right by the window that faced the campus' small garden. Her hand was holding a glass of iced chocolate, but she hadn't taken a sip since she got there. Her gaze was blank, staring outside as if enjoying the view, though her mind was still filled with the image of one particular boy, currently being surrounded by an annoying girl named Hannah. "You're really not jealous?" teased Yuju, scooping her ice cream and breaking the silence. Yin quickly turned her head. "No, like I said earlier." Yuju shrugged. "Okay, but if you ask me, you looked like you were about to throw something at him." Yin only sighed softly in response. She began to spin her glass slowly, trying to ease the irritation that still lingered in her chest. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approaching could be heard from the cafeteria entrance. Yuju, who was sitting facing the door, widened her eyes. What?" Yin frowned. Yuju didn't answer. Instead, she gave a wide grin and immediately pretended to be busy on her phone. Yin turned around slowly, and her heart instantly dropped. Jungkook, with his usual expressionless face, he walked straight toward their table, one hand tucked into his pocket, the other holding an unopened bottle of water. Yin quickly adjusted her posture, trying to look composed even though her heart was pounding like crazy. "Why'd you leave?" Jungkook asked flatly, his eyes fixed directly on Yin, ignoring Yuju who sat right beside her. Yin pretended to look confused. "Why does it matter? You didn't say anything to anyone. You just left." "I was thirsty, not a kid who needs permission," Yin replied sharply, looking away. Yuju could only stifle a laugh, covering her mouth with her hand. Jungkook gave a small nod, his expression unreadable. "Oh, thought you were sulking." Yin turned to him instantly. "Sulking? Why would I be sulking?" Jungkook shrugged. "Dunno, maybe because someone sat close to me earlier?" This time, Yin fell silent. Her eyes locked on his, but her mouth refused to speak. Pride and irritation swirled in her chest, leaving her tongue-tied. Jungkook set his water bottle down on the table and kept his gaze on her a little longer. "If you're jealous, say it. Don't just run away." His words were too honest, too on point. Yuju stood from her seat with a classic excuse, "I'm gonna run to the bathroom," and casually walked away, leaving the two of them alone. "I'm not jealous, okay? Besides, what are we anyway? Are we dating?" "We're not." Jungkook raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so you want us to date?" "Ugh, what are you even saying? I'm not jealous. You're just being full of yourself." Yin shot Jungkook a sharp glare, even though her heart was pounding uncontrollably. Jungkook leaned in slightly toward the table, his face still unreadable, but the glint in his eyes was teasing. But you were annoyed when Hannah sat close to me, right? Yin quickly turned to him, her glare sharpening. No, I already told you. I wasn't. Jungkook chuckled softly. Yin, you're way too easy to read. You know that? She stayed silent. With an innocent expression, Jungkook added, in that case, is it okay if I start getting closer to you? Since you get annoyed when I'm close to other girls. Just to be fair. Yin stared at him for a moment. She tried to keep her face composed, but her cheeks were slowly turning red. Jungkook, as usual, noticed it right away. If you keep staying quiet, I'm taking that as a yes. Yin looked down, pretending to focus on her drink, and Jungkook, he gave a small smile, stood up, and grabbed his water bottle. I'm heading back to class, but don't run away again, or else. He leaned in a little closer to her. I'll be even more convinced that you are jealous. Without waiting for a response, Jungkook walked away. Yin watched his back as he walked off, then suddenly pouted. Why is he so annoying, but still makes my heart go crazy like this? Huh? The restaurant atmosphere that night was warm and calm. Yin sat beside her mother, wearing a semi-formal pastel blue dress. Across from her, Jungkook sat with his parents, looking just as confused as Yin. At the dining table, the evening started with the usual small talk, campus life, updates on the property, business, and reminiscing about past vacations when both families used to travel together. But gradually, the direction of the conversation shifted, and there was something in the tone of their parents' voices that made Yin grow suspicious. We've already agreed, Yin's father finally said. This year, we're going to fully focus on the apartment project in Japan. 4 towers at once, Jungkook's father added. There's no way we can keep flying back and forth between Korea and Japan during the construction and sales process. That's why we've decided to temporarily move there for 2 years. Yin frowned. 2 years? Jungkook's mother nodded. Yes, sweetheart, and that's actually what we wanted to talk to you both about tonight. Jungkook set down his spoon. What do you mean? Mrs. Park looked gently at Yin and Jungkook. You two haven't graduated yet. We don't want your studies disrupted if you have to come with us to Japan. But at the same time, we're not comfortable leaving you both here alone. That's why we've decided. Yin's father continued. You two should get married. For a moment, silence filled the room. Yin's eyes widened. What? Jungkook glanced at Yin, then looked back at their parents. Married? Mr. Jeon nodded firmly. You've known each other since childhood. We trust that you can look after one another. This isn't just about family ties, but your safety and comfort too, especially Yin, who would be left without protection while we're abroad. But, we're still in college, Yin said softly, her voice slightly trembling. We won't force you, dear, Mrs. Jeon quickly added, but if you're willing, it would be a huge relief for us. And of course, the marriage can be kept private, even from your friends on campus if that's what you want. Jungkook went quiet, his mind racing. He glanced at Yin, and for the first time that night, their eyes met with an unusual seriousness. The truth was, they did have feelings for each other, but marriage was a big step. Still, strangely enough, the idea didn't feel as wrong as they thought it would. Yin looked down, truly considering it this time. Then she looked back at Jungkook as if searching for an answer in him. Jungkook took a slow breath and leaned back on his chair. If Yin agrees, I'm fine with it. Yin's eyes widened, surprised by Jungkook's quick response. Are you serious? She asked immediately. Jungkook turned to her, this time without a smile, just the firmness in his eyes. I don't mind marrying you. Yin stayed quiet, staring at him with furrowed brows. Seeing her expression, Jungkook held back a laugh, then gave a mischievous smirk. Yeah, it'd be better if we just got married, rather than you always getting jealous whenever another girl gets close to me. Immediately, Yin's eyes narrowed and she scoffed. Ugh, I told you, I'm not jealous. Jungkook just chuckled quietly, shaking his head. Meanwhile, the parents smiled as they watched the two interact. So sweetheart, what do you think? Jungkook already said yes, Yin's mother asked her gently. And for the first time that night, Yin's cheeks flushed a little. She looked down and spoke softly. Alright, I agree, but on one condition. Everyone turned to her. This marriage has to stay secret from our friends. I'm not ready for it to be a big deal on campus. The parents nodded, and Jungkook raised one eyebrow. What do you think, Jungkook? Are you okay with that? Mr. Jeon asked. Jungkook let out a quiet sigh. Well, if that's what Yin wants, then okay. But behind all the nods and smiles Yin showed in front of their parents, something was bothering her. Something she hadn't had the chance to say, and it definitely wasn't something she could bring up in front of their parents. She needed time alone with Jungkook. "Can we go outside for a bit?" she said softly to Jungkook. Jungkook glanced at her, then gave a small nod. Their parents noticed the movement and seemed to immediately understand. "Go ahead, you two. You probably need some privacy to talk," Yin's father said with a gentle smile. With a slight nod, they left the table and walked to a small garden next to the restaurant. The atmosphere outside was calm, only the sound of a fountain and the night breeze could be heard. They sat on one of the benches, and for a few seconds, they remained silent. "What is it?" Jungkook asked quietly, turning to her. Yin took a deep breath. I want to be honest about one thing." Jungkook waited patiently. "I know we agreed to get married. I don't mind, but..." Yin looked down at her hands, clutching the edge of her dress. "I'm not ready to get pregnant." Jungkook gave a slow nod. "That's okay. I don't want your studies to be affected either." Yin glanced at him, feeling relieved by his response, but then she looked down again, hesitating to continue. "But that's not all," she added in an even softer voice. "I'm also not ready to do that." Jungkook furrowed his brows, slightly surprised. "You mean, you don't want us to make love?" Yin quickly shook her head. "It's not that I never want to. I'm not ready right now. I don't know why. I just feel like I can't." Jungkook was silent for a moment. He looked at her, trying to read her expression. He could guess that maybe she was embarrassed or nervous, or maybe there was a personal reason she couldn't share yet. "So, are you scared? Or just shy around me?" he asked gently, without any judgment in his voice. Yin didn't answer. She only bit her lip and looked away. Jungkook sighed, then leaned back against the bench. "Alright, if you're not ready, I won't force you." Yin turned to him, eyes wide. "Really?" Jungkook nodded, though his tone this time was more serious. "But we'll still share the same bedroom." Yin almost protested, but for some reason, this time she stayed quiet. There was a strange feeling inside her. She couldn't explain. She didn't completely reject the idea. "Okay," she whispered. "So, where will we live?" Jungkook asked, changing the topic. "Do you have any ideas?" "I think we should live at my parents' house. It's closer to campus." Yin thought for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I agree." Jungkook gave a small smile. "Good, so, I guess that settles everything?" Yin looked up at the night sky for a second, then turned back to Jungkook. "Yeah, I feel a lot better now." Jungkook simply nodded. Yeah, it seemed like there was nothing else left to talk about. 1 month later, their wedding was held smoothly and simply. The event was only attended by close family and a few relatives, just as planned and agreed upon. After officially becoming husband and wife, Yin moved into Jungkook's parents' house. The large house now felt quieter, as both of their parents had already left for Japan to manage an apartment project that would last for the next 2 years. The early days of their marriage felt awkward. Even though they had known each other since childhood, living under the same roof, even in the same room, as husband and wife was something completely new. Yin often still felt nervous, while Jungkook seemed more relaxed, though he was secretly trying to adjust as well. Still, there was no pressure from Jungkook. As he had promised, he never forced anything. They took things slow, learning to understand each other's rhythms from morning routines to campus schedules. Behind it all, a sense of calm began to grow, a quiet comfort that came from being together, even if it wasn't yet filled with romance. And without realizing it, their bond was slowly starting to strengthen. One Sunday morning, the usually quiet Jungkook family home suddenly became a bit lively with an unexpected guest. Yin's older cousin, Suzy, suddenly showed up alone, carrying her 2-year-old daughter. Suzy looked tired and a little anxious as Yin greeted her at the door. "I'm really sorry for dropping by like this," Suzy said quickly, holding her sleeping daughter over her shoulder. "But I need your help, Yin." Yin immediately nodded and invited her inside. Jungkook, who had just come out of their bedroom, joined them in the living room, looking a bit confused but still welcoming. Suzy sat down and began to explain. "My husband suddenly collapsed this morning and had to be rushed to the hospital. We brought Yoonbi with us earlier, but the hospital staff recommended that children under 5 not be taken into the inpatient area, since it's not the healthiest environment for them. And our housemaid is on a 1-week break. She won't be back until tonight," she added, looking at Yin with pleading eyes. "So I have no one to leave Yoonbi with. I won't be long. I'll pick her up tonight." Yin glanced at Jungkook, who nodded slightly, silently giving his approval. It's okay, sister, just leave Yoonbi with us for now. Give me all her essentials, Yin said gently. Suzy immediately handed over a large bag filled with spare clothes, diapers, formula, milk, and several clean bottles. Oh, one more thing, Suzy added. Yoonbi just got weaned off breastfeeding. She doesn't nurse directly anymore, but she still tends to get fussy, especially when she's sleepy or bored. But don't worry, she's started accepting formula. Yin nodded in understanding. Okay, I'll make some when she's hungry. Thank you so much, Yin. I don't know what I'd do if you couldn't help. Suzy then said goodbye, kissed her daughter's forehead, and hurried back to the hospital. Once the door closed, Yin carried Yoonbi further into the house. Jungkook stood up too, eyeing the little girl with curious eyes. She's cute, but we don't have any baby toys here, Jungkook said, puzzled, as he noticed Yoonbi beginning to stir in her sleep. Yin looked around, then gave a small smile. Well, we'll have to get creative and make our own games. When Yoonbi woke up a few minutes later and started rubbing her eyes, she let out a soft cry from the unfamiliar surroundings. Yin immediately comforted her, singing a children's song softly while gently rubbing her back. Meanwhile, Jungkook went to the kitchen and returned with a few empty plastic containers, spoons, and 2 colorful bowls. I made some DIY instruments, he said, arranging the items. Yoonbi, wanna play music with Uncle Jungkook? Yin teased softly. Yoonbi looked at Jungkook with wide, curious eyes. Jungkook then began tapping the plastic containers with a spoon, creating a rhythmic beat. Strangely enough, Yoonbi smiled. See, she likes it, Jungkook said excitedly. Then the 3 of them played together, Yin singing, Jungkook playing his improvised instrument, and Yoonbi tapping the bowls as if mimicking them. Her little giggles began to fill the room, turning that morning into something warm and joyful. Before they knew it, the clock showed noon. After being fed some baby porridge and playing a bit more, Yoonbi started to look tired. She yawned a few times and became fussy again, a clear sign her little body needed rest. Yin, still holding her on her lap, said, looks like she's sleepy. Yeah, seems like it. Let's take her to the bedroom, Jungkook replied, standing up. Finally, they brought Yoonbi into Jungkook's bedroom, which was now their shared bedroom. They tried to put her to sleep by laying her down, but the little girl only cried louder. Jungkook instinctively picked her up again. Shh, it's okay, Yoonbi. Uncle Jungkook's got you. Yin quickly rushed to the kitchen, preparing formula milk with swift but careful movements. Moments later, she returned with a warm bottle and handed it to Jungkook, who gently offered it to Yoonbi. Yoonbi took a few sips but didn't finish the bottle. Her crying stopped briefly. Then she got fussy again. Maybe she's full but still uncomfortable, Yin said softly, trying to stay patient. They took turns holding her. Yin sang a lullaby, while Jungkook gently rocked her in his arms, softly patting her back. It took a while, but eventually, the soft cries faded, and Yoonbi fell asleep in Jungkook's embrace. Very carefully, Jungkook placed her in the middle of the bed, but just seconds after laying her down, Yoonbi stirred and looked like she was about to wake up again. Quickly, Yin lay down on the left side of the bed, facing Yoonbi to calm her. Jungkook followed, lying down on the right side, both of them gently surrounding Yoonbi in the center. Still a bit restless in her sleep, Yoonbi suddenly moved her hand as if searching for something. Then, unknowingly, her tiny hand landed on Yin's chest, over her clothes, and lightly grasped the soft flesh there. For a few more seconds, Yoonbi shifted slightly. Then all at once, her little body completely relaxed, her face peaceful, and her breathing steady. She had fully fallen asleep. Yin froze in place. Her eyes glanced down at Yoonbi's hand still resting on her chest, then looked over at Jungkook. Jungkook, equally stunned, blinked wide-eyed before glancing at Yin. Their eyes met, and the room that had been filled with cries was now silent, filled only by the sound of their beating hearts. Yin's face instantly flushed red. She bit her lower lip, trying to hide her awkward expression. Don't say anything, she whispered, barely audible. Jungkook barely held back a laugh, covering his mouth and turning his gaze toward the ceiling. But it's like she knows where safety is, he whispered teasingly. Yin covered her face with one hand, trying to steady her breathing. A few seconds after the room had quieted down, Yoonbi's tiny hand, which had previously been still, began to move slowly. She squirmed slightly as if seeking comfort in her sleep. Gradually, her hand slipped toward Yin's neck, sneaking inside the collar of her shirt, which was slightly open. Yin was startled. Her face turned panicked, and she reflexively glanced at Jungkook with an awkward expression. Jungkook, she whispered, barely audible. Jungkook, seeing what was happening, immediately fell silent. He tried gently pulling Yoonbi's hand away, but as soon as he did, the little girl began to fuss again in her sleep. Jungkook sighed quietly and let go of her hand. Maybe she thinks she's sleeping beside her mom, Jungkook said softly, trying to offer a logical explanation. Yin stayed quiet. She knew that if they moved Yoonbi's hand or made any sudden movements, she might wake up and cry again like before. They had struggled long enough to calm her down. In the end, feeling stuck, Yin remained still. She gently held Yoonbi's arm to stop it from moving further, but Yoonbi seemed to grow even more relaxed and fell into a deeper sleep. A small smile even appeared on her tiny face. Yin's cheeks turned red, clearly uncomfortable even though she understood the situation. Meanwhile, Jungkook, who had been trying hard to suppress his laughter, could only let out slow, silent breaths as he stared up at the ceiling. But soon, the atmosphere shifted slightly. Jungkook's gaze dropped back to Yoonbi's hand, still in the same place, and this time, his expression changed. He no longer looked amused. There was clear awkwardness on his face. Their eyes met again silently, but full of unspoken understanding. They both knew this was merely an innocent act from a child in need of comfort. Still, the lingering silence made both their hearts beat a little faster than usual. Minutes passed, and the room remained quiet, filled only by the soft sounds of Yoonbi's breathing as she slept peacefully between them. Her hand was still in the same spot, causing Yin to sigh every now and then, trying to calm her nerves. Her cheeks remained flushed, her eyes occasionally flicking toward Jungkook, who now lay silently, staring up at the ceiling without a word. Not a single word passed between them. They both knew how awkward the situation was, yet neither of them wanted to make it worse. After a while, Yin slowly pulled the blanket up and gently covered Yoonbi's chest. Jungkook watched without saying anything, then helped adjust the pillow to make sure Yoonbi was comfortable. She finally fell asleep, Yin whispered, her voice barely audible, careful not to wake the little girl. Jungkook nodded slowly. Yeah, took quite the effort to get her there, he replied with a faint smile. They both chuckled softly without sound, releasing the tension that had built up earlier. Yin adjusted her hair, then looked again at Yoonbi's peaceful little face. She's really clingy, huh? Yin murmured with a smile. Kids her age usually are, but I didn't expect you to be this patient, Jungkook said, glancing at her from the side. Yin glanced briefly at him, then looked away. Well, what else can I do? She's just a child. Jungkook nodded slowly, then muttered, if we have a child of our own one day, do you think you'll be just as caring? That question made Yin turn to look at him quickly. Their eyes met again, this time, lingering longer. I haven't thought that far ahead yet, Yin answered softly, but, of course, I'll love our child. Jungkook simply smiled, his eyes warm as he looked at her. Then, almost unintentionally, his gaze shifted once again to Yoonbi's hand. Damn it, Jungkook mentally scolded himself. How could his thoughts wander like this with a child lying right between them? Jungkook quickly turned his gaze away, trying to clear the dirty thoughts from his mind. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. Meanwhile, Yin kept her head down, trying not to think about anything other than focusing on Yoonbi, who was sleeping peacefully. A few minutes later, the awkward atmosphere began to ease a little. Yoonbi remained fast asleep between them, her tiny face looking calm and her breathing steady. Yin finally glanced toward Jungkook. You tired? She asked softly. Jungkook opened his eyes and turned to her. A bit, but I'm more worried about you. You seemed more exhausted than me. Yin nodded and gave a faint smile. I didn't expect taking care of a little kid for a few hours would be this tough. Especially if it's all day, or every day, Jungkook added, staring up at the ceiling. You sound like you're talking about the future, Yin teased lightly, though her tone remained soft. They kept their voices low to avoid waking Yoonbi. Jungkook turned to look at Yin with a small smile. Is that wrong? We're already married. There's nothing wrong with thinking about the possibility. Yin went quiet for a moment. Jungkook was right. They were legally husband and wife now. They gazed at each other for a few seconds. Then Yin looked away, her cheeks flushing red again. Seeing that, Jungkook had to stifle a laugh. He suddenly felt like teasing her a bit. I'm jealous of Yoonbi, he said while closing his eyes again. Yin frowned slightly. Why are you jealous? Jungkook opened his eyes and looked at her with a playful glint in his gaze. Well, of course, I'm jealous. She gets to touch you freely, while I don't. Yin's eyes widened at Jungkook's sudden confession of jealousy. Her eyes rounded in surprise, and her face instantly flushed. You're jealous because of that? She asked. her voice laced with disbelief. But behind her surprise, she couldn't lie to herself. There was a strange flutter in her chest, like a soft breeze slipping in, making her heart beat faster. Still, Yin quickly tried to neutralize the mood. Yoonbi is just a little girl, Jungkook. She doesn't even understand anything yet, she said softly but clearly. Why would you be jealous over something like that? But instead of smiling like before, Jungkook's expression changed. His gaze deepened, more serious, more intense. His eyes locked onto hers, then slowly dropped to her lips before returning to her eyes again. Because I'm a man, Jungkook whispered, his voice low and soft, and because you're my wife. Yin held her breath. Her heart was pounding. Jungkook kept his gaze on her without looking away. I've wanted to kiss you so many times, he said quietly, but I held back. I knew you needed time, but now. He leaned in slightly, his voice a mere whisper in the silence of the room. Can I, Yin? For a few seconds, Yin said nothing. She could feel Jungkook's warm breath so close, and although her mind was filled with hesitation, her body remained still. Slowly, she looked into his eyes. There was no pressure, no force, only honesty, and feelings they had probably both hidden for a long time. And in that moment, Yin knew. She didn't want to run from those feelings anymore. With utmost care, Jungkook gently moved Yoonbi's tiny hand from Yin's body. His movements were delicate, almost silent. Yin held her breath, worried the little girl might wake up. But thankfully, Yoonbi remained fast asleep, her breathing calm, her face peaceful. Once Yoonbi's hand was no longer touching her, Yin exhaled in relief. Jungkook looked a bit more at ease too, even throwing her a small smile. But the calm only lasted a moment. Jungkook looked at his wife deeply, his eyes filled with warmth and longing. He gazed at her eyes for a second, then his gaze dropped slowly to her lips again. He didn't say a word, just waited, as if asking for permission in silence. Yin, he whispered softly, may I kiss you? The question made Yin's heart race. She didn't respond right away, but she didn't pull away either. Her face turned red, but she didn't say no, and that was all the answer Jungkook needed. With gentle care, Jungkook leaned in and pressed his lips to hers, a soft, heartfelt kiss. There was no urgency, only sincerity. Because Yoonbi was between them, Jungkook carefully moved, crossing over the sleeping child's body with such caution. Now he was beside Yin, leaning slightly forward to make sure Yoonbi stayed undisturbed in her sleep. Yin's eyes widened a little, surprised at how close Jungkook was now. But before she could say anything, he simply smiled warmly, then leaned in again, giving her another kiss, this time deeper, more intense. He eventually pulled back slightly, gazing at her gently. I kissed you like this, and you still don't want me? He said softly, voice hoarse. What do you mean? Yin asked, confused. I love you. I've always loved you, Jungkook finally confessed. Yin blushed and smiled. I love you too, she replied, her hand slowly reaching up to gently run through his hair. Jungkook smiled back. I know, otherwise, why would you get jealous every time a girl tries to approach me? Yin pouted. You're so, she muttered softly, but this time, she didn't deny it. Yes, she was jealous, but she could stay calm because Jungkook never entertained any of them. Suddenly, Jungkook's hand moved, sliding to the spot where Yoonbi's tiny hand had been earlier. Yin let out a small gasp. Jungkook, her eyes darted toward Yoonbi, thankfully still fast asleep. Shh, lower your voice, or Yoonbi will wake up again, Jungkook whispered to his wife. But not long after, he stood up from the bed and gently lifted Yin into his arms in a bridal style, making her gasp and try to stifle the sound. Jungkook, what are you doing? She whispered, wrapping her arms around his neck. We'll continue on the sofa, so Yoonbi doesn't get disturbed, he whispered again, lips curling into a smirk. Yin blushed even more. Jungkook, but I don't want to get pregnant. Shh, relax, I know how to make sure you won't, he said, now settling onto the sofa with Yin sitting on his lap. You don't need to worry, just enjoy it, he whispered, continuing what they had started. And so, they finally shared their first time with quiet intensity on the sofa, carefully keeping their voices low so as not to wake Yoonbi from her peaceful sleep nearby.